This episode of the All About Pigeons podcast is brought to you by the Australian National Pigeon Club, known as the ANPC. The ANPC is the leading national organization for fancy pigeons in Australia, bringing together breeders, exhibitors, and clubs from across the country. They promote high standards in exhibition pigeons, support education and judge development, and play a major role in coordinating and supporting shows throughout Australia. Australian fancy pigeons are well respected on the international stage, and the ANPC continues to strengthen that reputation by supporting quality breeding, responsible exhibition, and a strong national pigeon community. For more information about the Australian National Pigeon Club, including affiliated clubs, upcoming events, and how to get involved, visit anpc.org.au. Welcome to the All About Pigeons podcast, brought to you by the All About Pigeons nonprofit organization, which is dedicated to promoting education and promotion of the pigeon hobby. Every week, a listener requests to drive our conversations about all things pigeons. Join me, Phillip Fry, as we learn and share stories about these incredible birds and this ancient hobby. Today, we're going to be covering the breed Chinese owls with Dick Holmberg. He is the vice president as well as many other positions in the National Chinese Owl Club. He is also the head of the judge program, and he has a Master Breeder Lifetime Achievement Award, his second Lifetime Achievement Award in that. He's also the author of the book, A Guide to Success in Breeding and Exhibition of the American Chinese Owl. So, Dick, thanks so much for coming on and talking about this breed with us today.
My pleasure.
So let's get a background on you with pigeons in general, how that gets started, and what led you into this specific breed of the Chinese owls.
I started when I was in junior high school. My dentist, one of his sons was a good friend of mine, and they had pigeons, and I got interested. I've loved birds since I was a little boy, but that's how I got interested in fancy pigeons. And my second year, I saw Chinese owls at a show and fell in love with them and got my first ones and exhibited my first one in 1967 and been doing it ever since. So 59 years I've been breeding and showing Chinese owls.
What was it specifically that kind of pulled you into that breed?
They have a lot of different feather features, what we call frills, 3 different areas, and they're a smaller bird that are easy to handle, just have kind of really interesting personalities.
There was an article I recently saw in a Pigeon magazine that talked about all the different directions in which they're going out and the correct lay of the feathers. It's quite a bird.
Yeah, and they've changed an awful lot over the years. I have a picture of one from back in 1940, and what they look like now, you'd swear it wasn't the same breed.
So can you tell us a little bit about the origin of this breed? Does it really come from China?
No. They actually originated in northern Africa. And then in about 1850, there was a French pigeon dealer who brought them to Europe, and they became popular very quickly. In fact, at one time, a good pair of Chinese owls was valued as being as valuable as a good team of carriage horses in Germany. And then the dealer decided he needed something exotic sounding to make them sell better, so he called them the Chinese owls, letting people believe they came from the Orient, even though they came from Africa.
That's actually just their name's actually just a complete misrepresentation to make it sell easier. Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then in about the 1870s, they brought them over to the U.S. and there was not a lot of them, but then in the 1930s, they decided to try to make a bigger, bolder head on the bird. So they crossed them with African owls and completely destroyed the frills. And then in the 1950s, a group from Iowa and a guy from Pennsylvania, James Moyer, they imported Spanish Correa, which have a lot of the frills, and changed the breed to what we have now through a lot of work in the 50s and 60s.
So they've had some African owl in them, some Spanish Correa. What other crosses have been put into this breed?
German owls, Egyptian owls, German shield owls. They kind of a combination of different ones, but the Spanish Correa is where they get the 3 frills, the neck frill, the breast frill, and the pantaloons. That breed is very heavily frilled, but they also have a lot of rough frilling on their back, which the Chinese owls that we have today, we don't want that. We want a very smooth back. So it's just a lot of selective breeding over a period of 30 or 40 years to get them to look like what they do now.
So you were mentioning about how different they look now. What has been like some of the big changes since they have come here to the States?
They stand a little bit more upright. They have much more profuse frilling, especially over the chest area. It used to be just a little bit of frill in the front, and now it covers the entire front of the bird. And then the neck frill also is just a few feathers down on the side. Now it comes right up around the eyes, looks more like a collar. We've added a lot of different colors to the breed over the years. Originally, there was only 5 or 6 colors. Now we have 34 recognized colors and quite a few more colors that we're working on.
Wow. And so when you first got into this breed, you mentioned a little bit of their temperament. What is their temperament like?
That can really vary from different bloodlines. We have, overall, they're kind of a flighty bird, and some can be really bad. But then I have like my family of blacks and browns, solid colored ones that are very tame. So part of it's breeding, and some of it is also the way you handle it. If you handle the birds from the time they're little babies on a regular basis, they'll stay fairly docile and easy to handle. If you never touch them, they get very wild.
Oh, okay. And with all that frill and, just really delicate feathers, what does that loft setup look like? What kind of housing do they require to keep everything pristine for those birds?
Oh, actually, they just need space and individual perches so that they can, have their own spot to sit, regular bath water, and keep them clean. And the feathers themselves are very durable. It's like the English trumpeters that have the big muffs or the fantails that have the big tails. Those are a lot harder to maintain than Chinese owls.
Do you have like an aviary?
Because I live in Las Vegas, I have large open front buildings. So there's good airflow because it gets so hot in the summer. When I used to live in Minnesota, they were more like old chicken barns with insulation to heat in the winter to keep them warm. The housing for Chinese owls is very much dependent on the climate you live in.
I ask because I'm thinking about wires and whatnot, if the wire could damage feathers or if that's an issue with these breeds.
No, we have wire on the front of the wall and then on the floor. There's really no place where their feathers are going to touch it to cause any problem, except on the floor when the males are strutting to show off for the females. Sometimes they'll get the ends of the tails a little bit raggy, but we pull those and so they grow new ones for the shows. About 8 weeks before each show, we pull any bad feathers and they grow in new ones. So they're fine.
Can you describe what your loft setup looks like?
Well, I have 3 larger lofts that are 8 by 16. Again, expanded metal in the front, so they're totally open that way. And then the insides are just full of perches. And then I have 26 individual breeding pens that are 2 by 2 by 4. Because I do a lot of different things with colors, I want to make sure that my genetics are pure. Because Chinese owls are very promiscuous. If you have an open loft, you know who laid the eggs, but you have no clue who the father is. And so we have the individual breeding pens to make sure our genetics stay true.
And I get it too, yeah, you're doing this kind of a setup with the floors and the big open ventilation because it gets very hot where you are.
Right. Yeah, you got to have good airflow when it's 110. During the winter, I do close things up a little bit because it'll get down in the 30s at night sometimes too. But it's very easy to raise pigeons in Las Vegas compared to Minnesota.
I bet. How often are you doing baths out there for them?
Usually about once a week. If it's really hot, maybe twice. I just have these 2-gallon galvanized pans that I set on the floor and fill them with water, and they just dive in them.
Yes. Are you doing any type of 20 mule team in there or anything like that into the water?
I do put 20 milton borax in the water during the summer and early fall when I'm getting ready for shows.
Before breeding season, do you have any regiment of deworming or anything like that you're doing before the breeding season starts?
Yes, I use ivermectin, just 4 drops down the throat for worming. And then I also make sure everything has had a booster vaccination. The Chinese owls, I trim the vents. If they're really good quality birds, the feather is so dense that they have a really hard time with fertility if you don't trim the feathers around the vent.
And what are you vaccinating for?
Paramyxo primarily. And now more recently, they have combination viruses or vaccines that you can do some prevention of adeno, circovirus, rotavirus. They're coming out with some new ones that are in testing stage. And then I used to vaccinate for salmonella, but I didn't really find it to be that effective. So I usually do more of a water treatment for that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be nice if they put a bigger combo one with the adenovirus one too. I've typically done PMV and salmonella combination one in the past.
Right, right. And then I also, for canker, I make sure I run something through the water to make sure there's no canker where the babies get infected at a small age.
Okay, so you're doing that like halfway through towards the end of breeding season then?
Actually, I've tried to do it at the beginning of breeding season, so none of the parents will be carrying anything to give to the babies.
Oh, okay.
And then when I wean them, if I see any issues, then I'll treat them at that time too. I've got tablets that I'll pop in the young ones if I see any sign of anything after I wean them.
So you're doing the borax in the baths. Do you do anything else for the lice and the mites and anything like that?
Yeah, when I wean them, when I mate the pairs, I spray everything, and then again when I wean the babies, I hit them, and about 6 weeks later with I use called Adams Plus. It's a dog flea and tick spray. I just spray that under the wings and the tail, and it works very well, and it has a pleasant smell, and I don't worry about getting it on my hands like some of the other products.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people really like that stuff.
Yeah,
So once you get some good birds that have bred, they've given you some birds that even at a young age you can tell they're gonna have good color, good markings on them, and you want to get these birds ready for the show. Do you have a separate loft that you're raising these ones in up for space, or how do you get the birds ready for a show?
yeah. I have two 8x8 holding pens that there's nothing in there but feeders, water, and perches. And enough perches for every bird to have their own perch. That's where I have the bath water, make sure everything's vaccinated. And then I routinely pull a few out and put in judging coops and let them sit in there and get used to it. Use a judging stick so they're, used to being handled. That really helps when they get to the shows. They aren't too scared. And then I pull feathers, like I said, about 7 or 8 weeks before the first show. I pull out any flight or tail feathers that haven't molted yet on birds that are old enough and do special trimming, toenails, beaks, all the things I've learned over the years to get them in good show condition.
Excellent. And then how many birds are you putting in that 8x8 loft, getting them ready for show?
Generally around 45 to 50. I usually have at least 50 to 55 perches in each pen.
Okay. How long are you putting them in the show cages for to kind of get them familiar with it?
They'll usually spend an hour to 2 hours at a time, and then that will happen probably 5 or 6 times before the first show. And the ones that I really like might end up in there 10 or 12 times just because I like to look at them.
So you mentioned earlier about trimming the vents. You're trimming the vents on the males and the females to be
Yes.
more successful pairing. Okay. Outside of having to trim the vents, how are they as far as creating young and being good parents and everything else?
They're pretty good parents for feeding the young, but they don't do well in cold weather because they have a tendency to want to go and make the next nest before the babies have enough feathers on them. So that is one problem with the breed is that they're not good cold weather breeders.
You ever do like the double nest box setup and have them take care of two at a time
Yeah,
or okay.
I have double nests in there, but and sometimes the first light in the morning they get off and go in the other nest to start getting ready to lay the next set of eggs. And if the babies don't have enough feathers on, they're not going to last long when it's cold. Once
Oh
it gets
right,
up to
yeah.
where it's like where it stays up in the 50s at night, then they're fine. But when it's down in the 30s, they get off them too early.
Have you ever done any fostering before?
Yes, I do. I do that quite with my top pairs. I have fosters because my English trumpeters are poor parents, and so I have them for them. And but I'll take some of the young from my best pair of owls and put under them too.
Okay. What breed do you use to foster?
I use mostly flying flights or crosses with flying flights and racing homers.
Oh, okay.
I found the
Interesting.
crosses make the best parents.
And so you mentioned that the breed has really come a long ways here in the States over its time here, and the colors and patterns that have come up without without the whole list. Can you give us a breakdown of some of the more popular colors and patterns that you're seeing at the show?
Well, the blue bars and blue checks have been around forever, and those are the ones that generally do the best. But we're starting to see a lot more strength in birds winning with other colors like indigo, brown, and khaki. I've been working with bald heads for quite a few years. Haven't had one take champion yet, but they're getting better. Recessive reds and yellows have been around for a long time, but they've been never really done well in the shows until recently. They're starting to show some big improvements. There's a Milky has gotten to be really popular. Getting those and like if you see a silver Milky, they're absolutely gorgeous, and that's getting to be very popular. And we've had some of those places reserve champions.
What are the colors and patterns that you're working with specifically?
Almond is something I've been working hard on, trying to get the better color, ground color, and the flecking. The Milkies, I'm working on dominant opal in my bald heads right now as a special project. Wes Price, a friend of mine, he and I are working on Swabian, which is a field pigeon marking right now. And we're starting to get those not too far from show quality.
Going into the show world of this, can you give us the point value breakdown of this breed when it comes to judging?
Yeah, it's we just redid our standard here about 5 years ago. We did the new drawings of front, side, three-quarter, and top view, and then we redid the written standard to match the drawings. I was on that committee and did quite a bit of work with it. And we have it now where it's kind of break it down into groups of 15. The breast frill is 15 points, the pantaloons are 15, the neck frill or collar is 15, station is 15, and then everything except the collar above the shoulders, the head and neck, beak setting, eyes, eye sear, that's all a group of 15 points. And then the rest of the bird, the body, flights, tail, feet, legs, is another 15 points. And then finally, we have 10 points for color to make the total of 100 points.
So that's really interesting. You guys really didn't put anything too heavy on one side of the bird. Everything seems to be, like you saying, 15 points for everything. What kind of led to that decision?
Right. Yeah, well, it was a matter of we were having too many people just breed for the frills, and the birds weren't balanced. They didn't all station very well. Some of them were very long, very tall, getting too large. So we changed it to try to get a very balanced bird. We want to keep them small and typey, and we even put in the maximum or what we want for the size of the bird: 8 inches tall, 8 inches long. And so, like I said, we were going for a bird that was balanced, but yet had a bold look to it, putting more emphasis on the size of the head and the power of that. Because we want a bird to be small, but yet looks bold without being big, like some breeds have done.
That's really smart too, putting a cap on it. I mean, and having it all around that same range, so it is a balance, and so you're not putting a ton of points on one frill, and then you'll see 20 years down the road these,
Yeah,
extreme varieties or whatever. And like you said, how you've seen the bird
right.
change, and you can see that with I always bring up, it's always interesting to look in the old American pigeon journals at some of these breeds and how much they've changed, because maybe that's what it was. Maybe it was because the really high points were on one certain feature of the bird, and then people just really went crazy with it and got that extreme. So yeah,
Yes.
that's a really interesting way of looking at it. You were on the committee for the show standard. You've been able to see the breed change throughout the years. What would you say, looking and going to the shows, and what would you say is a common faults that the breed still needs to kind of work on to really get closer to that standard overall?
To me, it's mostly with the length of the bird. Some of them that have a lot of frills are still too long. And then also the head. To get a bird that looks bold and powerful without being big, you've got to have a real strong head. Good frontal in the skull, good width between the eyes, the proper beak setting. And that's where I'm seeing judging and watching the birds at the shows that our judges still need to work more towards realizing that from the shoulder up, we have 30 points out of the 100. And they're just not putting enough emphasis on that. We're having too many birds that have poor, weak heads that are winning the shows because they have large breast frills. We're getting better, but we still got a ways to go.
And overall, where would you put this bird as far as someone who might be interested in breeding this? Would this be kind of a beginner bird, more towards intermediate, or someone who's more experienced with breeding the fancies?
I would say between beginner and intermediate. You do need some knowledge in breeding in order to pick the right selections, but this breed is very good. The people in the National Chinese Owl Club are very good about letting go really good breeding stock to people starting out. we've seen numerous people go out there and get their first reserve champion or something within 2 or 3 years after starting, because they've been given really top quality stock to start with.
You wrote the book, A Guide to Success in Breeding and Exhibition of the American Chinese Owl. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, it's not easy to just put a whole book together and write it. What kind of drove you to put this together? What all is entailed in that book?
Yeah, it was something that several people have been kind of encouraging me to do for several years. And back in 1922 or 2022, my wife and I were on a trip in Morocco and Spain, and I spent a lot of time on buses. And I just started writing and doing notes, and within 6 months it was done. Then I just had to put pictures for all the to give just deep or examples of things I was talking about. And I worked with Dorothy Connolly from Purebred Pigeon magazine, and she helped me put it all together. And within less than a year after I started, it was published. It's supposed to be a how-to book. It to really help beginners get started out. A little introduction about the breed, tips on breeding, preparation for show, my process in how to cull birds to get a good bloodline going, how to trim and pluck them for show. Just that the first half of the book's that. The second half is I take the standard, and I have the standard drawings in there and go through the entire standard and give my interpretation of what each section is supposed to be, how you're supposed to look at it, and go through all the faults, have pictures with the examples of the faults, same thing, the strong points, pictures with that. And it's been very well received. I did a limited edition. It's only 150 copies, and there's less than 50 left. So,
where can people get this book?
You can actually get it on the National Chinese Owl Club website in their store, or you can contact me directly. But that's the easy way. You can buy it right there on the store. Club secretary lets me know when somebody puts in an order, and I ship it out the next day.
And is there any tips that you could share with somebody who maybe, let's say, is either just getting started or has been breeding the Chinese owls for a while?
Just start with a reputable breeder. Best thing is if you can go to their loft directly. They'll be myself. If somebody shows up at my house, they're going to get better birds at a really good price. If you want me to take the time to send pictures, I'm really good at taking pictures and making a mediocre bird look great. So I don't recommend people buying birds by seeing pictures. You need to see them in person. If you want to buy them at the shows, by all means, contact a few top breeders before the shows. Don't expect to go to the shows and find have them birds to start you out for sale. They're usually showing what they're going to keep themselves. So contact these breeders before the shows, and they'll bring what you want to look at.
There is the National Club. Their website is nationalchineseowlclub.com. And there is a Facebook also?
Yes, there is. Yes, the NCLC Facebook.
Okay. How big is that club?
We're up to about 130 members now. At one point, we had about 200. Then it dropped down to about 110 for about 10, 15 years. But the last 5 years, it's been growing very nicely. I think we added about 20 new members in the last 2 years, above and beyond what people who left. So it's a strong club. Has been very strong. We recently did a handbook for members only that has the Constitution, bylaws, Master Breeder Program, the standard, all the different colors and the descriptions. And then there's a lot of advertising was done. Gives a history of the breed. That's been very popular. A lot of people who aren't even in the breed want to get it, but they have to join the club to get it.
What are some of the major shows that the club sets up at?
Well, of course, the NPA Grand National is our final show that is the big one. And then the Great Western in Watsonville, California, is probably our largest show as far as numbers goes most of the time. And then the Pageant of Pigeons is a very good one out here. And then Des Moines, Iowa has always been a very strong show for us in December. Over in the east part, the Reading show using Lancaster, Pennsylvania has always been around for a long time and always been a well-received show. The National Youngbird Show, Louisville, Kentucky, in October, at the end of October, is our big Youngbird show. And then we have an annual fall meet that moves around to where different places the district directors have to bid for it. This last year it was in Watsonville. Several years it's been in Des Moines.
Yeah, that's definitely a pretty active club. Then you guys are really getting around and going to shows and setting up. That's great.
Oh yeah, I think I usually show at 7 or 8 shows every year.
Excellent. Well, there you go. If you guys are interested, check out the website, nationalchineseowlclub.com. Check out their Facebook, the website. You can also get his book up there. Dick, I want to thank you so much for coming on and answering my barrage of questions. I hope it's really helpful for everybody who's interested in the Chinese owl breed.
Thank you for having me on, and if anybody wants to get more information on it, they can contact me.
Excellent. Thank you. This episode of the All About Pigeons podcast is brought to you by the Australian National Pigeon Club, known as the ANPC. The ANPC is the leading national organization for fancy pigeons in Australia, bringing together breeders, exhibitors, and clubs from across the country. They promote high standards in exhibition pigeons, support education and judge development, and play a major role in coordinating and supporting shows throughout Australia. Australian fancy pigeons are well respected on the international stage, and the ANPC continues to strengthen that reputation by supporting quality breeding, responsible exhibition, and a strong national pigeon community. For more information about the Australian National Pigeon Club, including affiliated clubs, upcoming events, and how to get involved, visit anpc.org.au. Thank you for listening to another ad-free, listener-requested episode of the All About Pigeons podcast. If you like the show and want to help it keep it going, as well as supporting your other pigeon promotional work, head to the website, PigeonPod, that's pigeonpod.com. You can make a donation there. If you can't make a donation today, support the show by giving us a good 5-star review wherever you're listening to us at right now. That really helps the podcast and helps the algorithm get us out there to other people who might not know about Pigeon Podcast. If you have any episode requests, upcoming pigeon shows, competition results, or you want to be a guest on the show and just talk about some pigeons, or you have a shout out for a friend, shoot us an email at staff@pigeonpod.com. Thanks again for listening. We really appreciate your support. And remember, together the hobby thrives. Support each other and enjoy your pigeons.